Thank you very much. And since this is the very last session for this 3-day forum, we, of course, would welcome a good discussion at the end of this, which can take on what the 4 speakers said, and maybe even what was not said, maybe in this session, but during this course of these days, to which you may want to add your questions and comments. And some of that I'm going to do. We heard 4 presentations. The first 2 I would call analytical, and the latter 2 which I would call reflective. And I think this balance of analysis and reflection in a way characterizes, to my mind, this whole enterprise of 3 days. We, of course, are addressing some immediate crises, economic crisis, the crisis of war and militarism, though we haven't paid so much attention in these 3 days to that crisis, and of course the ecological crisis. We can also call them the ecological imperialism, the imperialism brought by war and militarism, and the ecological imperialism. And we must address them because there is an immediacy to them. Whether it is, as Ben was saying, the debt crisis, unemployment and underemployment. Sam was saying, what does sustainability mean, and the disorganized, disconnected social movements. And therefore we need to address them, and we need to have a view on them from the South-South sustainability viewpoint. But to my mind, we cannot stop there. We cannot only talk about the current crises and our immediate solutions and stop there. Because we need, at this point of time, to go beyond that. If we're true to our South-South sustainability title, which is to ask the question, as Erebus called it, it is craft sustainability. Sam said, I nearly wanted to say that, but Erebus said it for me. So what is the sustainability? Now, a journalist asked Gandhi, said, Mr. Gandhi, I want to ask you a question. What is your view about Western civilization? And Gandhi replied, it could be a good idea. Yeah? Now, if today we were asked the question, what is your view about the Western developmental model? My answer would be, it's a very bad idea. And I think we've been discussing aspects of this very bad idea here in these 3 days and otherwise. But having analyzed, discussed, dissected how it is a very bad idea, we cannot stop there. We have to say, do we have a good idea to replace that bad idea? And this, to me, is a deeper question which goes beyond answering the present problems of unemployment and debt crisis and things like those. Do we have a good idea compared to what we generally characterize as the Western developmental model? Therefore, we need to ask, to my mind, a more fundamental question. It's not just that what kind of an economy should replace the present neoliberal economy. But after all, what is an economy for? Is the economy the end of our vision? What is the fundamental thing for which we need a good idea? And I think, to my mind, one of the ways of asking that question is, what kind of a life do we want to lead? What kind of a life do we want to lead? And to which then we decide what would be a good economic system for that, what would be a good governance system for that, what would be a good sustainable system for that. Well, unless we have some idea about what kind of a life we need to lead, we might be talking about lots of things, but evading the fundamental question, which to me is the sustainability question. Now, you could ask this question in many ways. to my mind, and I'm being very reductionist, we have an answer to this question today: what kind of a life do we want to lead? And the answer is a life which gives me lots of wealth. To me, that's the dominant paradigm. To me, that's what the 1%, 99% is trying to characterize. There is a 1% with obscene wealth. And therefore, if the 99 people are to be taken to that 1% wealth, then obviously there is nothing in the earth that will remain. So it's completely unsustainable. And believe me, this 1%, 99% might look a rhetorical slogan, but I would refer to you an analysis by the Financial Express, which actually analyzed this slogan in actual data. And the Financial Express said that these guys are actually right if you analyze the data. That 1% has increased its wealth by 400%, whereas the middle class in America has increased by 10%. So there is that kind of polarization of wealth. And that polarization of wealth is based on a conscious or unconscious premise that more wealth is more happiness. I think we need to interrogate that notion itself. Amartya Sen, the economist, raised that in a couple of questions, which I'm going to read to you. He said, there are many fundamentally different ways of seeing the quality of living. He said, you could be well off without being well. You could be well without being able to lead the life you wanted. You could have got the life you wanted without being happy. You could be happy without having much freedom. You could have a good deal of freedom without achieving much. I think this is the kind of a fundamental question we need to have, which an economist asks, that what is it that we want to lead finally? You could be obscenely rich, but with breast cancer and prostate cancer. Is that the kind of life we want to lead? So from this menu of what could be the quality of life, unless we have some idea about which one of them do we want, we cannot talk about merely employment, unemployment, and who has how much wealth and who has less wealth and more wealth. And therefore when we say that, and as I say, that's my opinion, Western civilization could be a good idea, but Western development model is a bad idea. Do we have an alternative idea of that development, of that life? And is there from the South, and by South I mean a global South, which includes people of the North. And the South to me in this, though not defined, is people of the South and not nations of the South. I don't want to speak on behalf of the nations of that. I cannot speak on behalf of the Indian state. I have nothing to do with it. But I can speak as a person from it, as people from India. So do people of India have some notions of that, what kind of a life do we want to lead? Which is different from the notion which is inherent in the Western developmental model. I think that's to me the question. Now, from Chiapas, from the Zapatistas, I can see reflections of that kind. Eco-sufficiency is a reflection of that kind. But obviously, these are still fragmented. Is it possible for us to create a more holistic notion which is more integrated into a developmental model? It's very interesting that we're having this forum because many years ago, Kinchi might remember, or Shantana might remember sitting here, Jungok sitting here might remember, we wanted to do a project which said Asian leaders and thinkers. And it was a project which was supposed to derive that is there an Asian thinking, and we were calling it Asian and not South because we couldn't be ambitious at that time to have a complete global South, which has elements of this alternative view of which could be constructed into a political system. Because obviously there are scattered thinkings, but the scattered thinkings have to be woven into an alternate political economic system. So we were ambitious at that time to try and attempt in Asian thinkers synthesis. But we never got down to doing it because of so many constraints. But if we are in a South-South solidarity, a South-South sustainability kind of a process, and with Professor Wen telling us that this is not going to be the only one, the second one is coming up in June, and I hope a third one. Can we take it upon ourselves to say that from Ecuador, from Bolivia, from Chiapas, from China, from India, from Thailand, from the global South, and from people who live in northern countries but are South in their thinking, we will go beyond describing and analyzing the problems of the world today in trying to say that we can create what was created at one point of time, a socialist model. A socialist model that was practiced in the Soviet Union for 70 years. I don't think it's practiced in China, but people might catch me by the throat and kill me. And I would say this, where with eco-sufficiency, with the notion of the Chiapas, I don't think elements of socialism are to be rejected. There are elements of that need to be resurrected and made a part of that, but perhaps enriched by other thinkings. I would probably say that at the end of these 3 days and two analytical and two reflective speeches that we heard, I would urge that if you may reflect and go beyond the immediate problems of finance, capital, financialization, bad bonds, and things like those, into reflections of that kind in an uninhibited manner, where we are saying that we want to be a part of the process towards this larger alternative thinking, which is what kind of a life do we want. But to end that, we are now caught up because of the ecological crisis into extending this into a larger challenge. It is not only the question of what kind of a life do we want. The larger challenge is what kind of a life do we want along with the life of the earth. We can no longer talk about the well-being of only the people without the well-being of the earth, because the well-being of the earth itself is under threat. And if the well-being of the earth is threatened by 4 degrees temperature increase, it's quite clear and surely the well-being of the people is finished. Bangladesh already has a new term of climate refugees. There will be something like 1 million climate refugees very soon in Bangladesh. And if you combine them with the climate refugees of the Pacific Islands, we'll have millions and millions of climate refugees. And once that happens, forget about small problems like debt problem of US. We're going to have a problem whose dimensions we can't even imagine. So therefore, the well-being and happiness that we talk about cannot be today talked of without talking about the well-being of the earth together, which poses a bigger challenge. So, whether the indigenous people's relationship with nature are the answer, whether the feminist construct of nature and humans is an answer, whether a different notion of economy is an answer, I don't know. But the point is that if we here cannot address that question and are unwilling to address that question, then we're not doing the kind of job which, as scholar activists who are present here, ought to be doing. And my final comment is, and this is my gut feeling and opinion, I don't think that answer is going today to come from academic research alone, by sitting and thinking and writing in a piece of paper, or by case studies or things like those. It has to come through profound practice. I sincerely believe that those of us who find that the answers are within the indigenous people or practices of village women, rural women and so on, in a very Gandhian sense must be morally and ethically courageous to say that we will also practice that life. We will not only valorize that life and say that is a solution, whereas I lead my life which is different. But if my conviction is so much, then I better start practicing the elements of that life. Therefore, I am saying it cannot only be academic, that I have written a paper about it, but my life is different. Do we have that moral courage to say that as true organic intellectuals, and not only academic disjointed intellectuals, we have notions of what that alternative life is, and we are also willing to practice element of that life? I think we are at the threshold of this very, very difficult questions, which every interrogation of a political system is also an interrogation of myself. Am I prepared to accept that interrogation and make myself subject to it? Or am I still in the scientific way, which I was trained as a scientist, I'm looking at the objective reality outside and I'm only an observer? I don't think that's going to work anymore. So I think we are in that kind of situation. And I've taken much more time than I should, but it's only to provoke you to get into a much deeper discussion and question and answer session. Thank you very much. Yeah, we have a mic.
Thank you. I will try to speak in English, not very good, but I'll do my best. To continue with this provocation, as you said, and before the end of the forum, I want to remark the importance of the object of Ariel's talk. Because family is not an harmonious group, as Naila Kabir has said. Family is a group that frequently are very different distribution of food, of work, and goods, and of course women are frequently the worst place in this. And we don't have to forget, because when we talk about sustainability, we think that all the poor are poor. And in the family of people who has lower incomes, they are always women in the worst place. Women are those who are in the soul of the older societies, and they are in each family assuming the transference of the cost of the societies. For example, when there is enough food, they are who eat less than the others. And many things, they work and water, and they use less and less and less. So I think it's important not to forget that there is no equality in the families. When we talk about that, it's important to say that it's the same in the rural areas than in the cities, and also in Mexico, than in Bangladesh, than in Africa, and also in Europe and United States and everywhere. It's the same thing. And in this issue, we can say that it is in the capitalistic system and in the non-capitalistic system, because the communities in rural areas in Mexico, in the rainforest, for example, where I used to live. I think there is not a capitalistic system, and is this problem. So if we talk about sustainability, it's important to remember that we have to work in the gender equality. Thank you.
I'm Gani Serrano from the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement. I think the question of what kind of life we want, I assume that the way you're talking about are the people around the room, or even a larger group of people. But certainly, it's hard to talk about what life we want for the 6 billion people who think, enjoy different things. And, but just about us, I think we need to ask the question even beyond simply what kind of life we want, to if the life that we have chosen to live or would want to live can be supported, is supportable. Because for me personally, I can reflect, my happiness is based on fuel, on fossil. And I guess a lot of us here, the way we pursue our lives, our happiness, traveling, reading books, whatever, computer, even paperless computer, are all based on fuel, on fossil. And if that's the kind of happiness that, if that's the kind of life that makes me happy, then is that something that can be supported? Is that something that's supportable in the sense that we're talking sustainability here? So are the patterns of production and consumption currently as we know it, as we know them, the culture that is associated with production systems and consumption systems, are these things really fit in or are compatible with the kind of sustainability or sustainable development that we're talking about? These are the questions that I think need to be raised. And there probably would be, we could be accused of being hypocritical also, in the sense that we are pushing for certain values that define the criteria of the kind of life that we want to live, and yet we ourselves probably are living double lives, in the sense that as we are now, as I am now, I know where my happiness is built on, and I could say the same thing probably for many others. So these are just reflection on what you said, Vinod. Thank you.
Yeah, here.
Hello, I'm Vivo, and I want to ask a simple question. How can we